We are here at the 60th Annual Congress of the Grassland Society of Southern Africa in Hilton in KZN. 5 days of workshops and presentations on the whole field of grasslands and rangelands management, ecology, restoration, planted pastures and fire management. Professor Kevin Kirkman was closely involved in putting this program together. Let's hear what he has to say. Professor Kevin Kirkman is the chairman of the organizing committee of the 60th Annual Congress of the Grassland Society of South Africa. Kevin, you've been working, more than a year now in planning this Congress. The 60th, is it special? Did you make a special effort in this Congress specifically?
Yes. Now, the Grassland Society of Southern Africa originated in Pietermaritzburg. The first Congress was held at the then University of Natal premises, and we've tried to hold all of our milestone congresses in or around Pietermaritzburg. So the 25th was in Pietermaritzburg, the 50th 10 years ago was in Pietermaritzburg, and this is now the 60th and is being held in Hilton, which is just outside Pietermaritzburg.
Okay, and what does it take to organize or to plan a Congress to satisfy the needs and the curiosity of all your members? What does it take?
It takes quite a lot of work. Firstly, you've got to find a venue that is a good venue that can handle the number of people and accommodation and accessibility. So we started about 2 years ago to look for a venue and decided on this venue being quite nice, close to Pietermaritzburg, and with good accommodation options.
And historic in its own right.
It is historic in its own right, yes. And then we started to look at the program, and we wanted to have as much as possible a normal Congress. So the content that you see here is typical of the content that we have in most of our Congresses, but we certainly invited a couple of talks and plenary talks to have a little bit of a look back at history and see where we're going and where we've come from and where we are going to. So that was a little bit of extra that we put into it. And then we had a couple of themes that fit into the local area. For example, a theme on rangelands and how rangeland management or grassland management affects water supply, for example, because we are in the Umgeni catchment area, and the Umgeni catchment supplies water for several million people in Pietermaritzburg, Durban, down to the coast. And grassland management, fire, grazing, and alien plants have a big impact on water supply, both quality and quantity of water. So that's one of the local themes, and then we had a few others as well.
Finding people to present worthwhile papers, is that a problem?
No, we were very oversubscribed at this Congress, and the program is actually very full because we have a very active science fraternity in South Africa in this rangeland, grassland fraternity or field, and we had a lot of submissions. So the only talks or the only people that we invited was we selected a couple of people and approached them to provide plenary talks, and the rest of it was people submitting their own talks voluntarily. They want to talk, they want to be involved.
Quite a few of the talks are very short. I was surprised when I saw the program and the amount of short talks. Yeah.
Yes. Now that was something that we are trying. So we've got 3 formats of talks really. We've got the standard 15-minute talks, and then we have posters, and then we thought we'd like to try having the short 5-minute talks, which gives people an opportunity to give a platform presentation, which may reach a wider audience than the posters. And it's something that we've tried. We think it works quite well, although some people tended to go over time. You know, you try and prepare a 5-minute talk and it turns into a 10-minute talk. But in general, I think the people who delivered good ones managed to get their point across on the platform. And that platform presentation also has a wider reach with the hybrid or the remote audience that we have. This is a hybrid conference, so we do have people available online, and they get to see the talks and get to potentially ask questions as well.
My name's Tim O'Connor. I'm a rangeland ecologist who's been undertaking range ecology for quite a few decades. My address today, I wanted to convey 2 what I think are important issues. One is sustaining local science through support of our journal and the sort of material which needs to be contributed to that. in order that we have as good a repository as possible of local knowledge for meeting our local management challenges. Part of this was then asking how do we best improve the manner in which we are going about our rangeland science. There's some exceptionally good rangeland science that has been and is being done, but I see a need to extend it to be more holistic in the framework in which it was conducted. And part of this is to resurrect what was discussed some 5 decades ago, a systems approach where we have the questions we address and the studies we pursue in the context of the larger ecosystem. In other words, no matter how small a component, think of it as part of the bigger picture, because to address most management issues, we have to address the bigger picture. Yet, unfortunately, the nature of a lot of scientific funding is relatively short-term. It is for postgraduate degrees or people who get small research grants. It needs cohesive structures which enable continuity of work such that a bigger picture can be developed. In pursuit of this, we will therefore also contribute to an increasing knowledge of individual systems, enabling both better management systems on the ground, better policy-making frameworks, because we will become better informed. Just bear in mind, the subject matter of what you listen to at the Rangeland Society is a minimum of 85% of the land surface of South Africa, and probably more so for our immediate neighbors of Namibia, Botswana, and Zimbabwe. In other words, rangeland science might not get a lot of high profile, but it constitutes the bulk of Southern Africa's surface area and is therefore deserving of never-ending, continued and close inspection and study in order to improve our knowledge base for decision-making. Thanks.
Good morning. My name is Urs Kreuter. I am a professor emeritus in the Department of Ecology and Conservation Biology at Texas A&M University, recently retired and living in near Malalan in South Africa now. My background is in rangeland management. I'm also an economist, so I deal on ecological economic issues. What I was focusing on in my presentation today was on adaptive management in grazing systems. So we have often talked about adaptive multi-paddock grazing, and the emphasis in that is on adaptive, because the multi-paddocks just enable us to move animals across the landscape in various sequences or various times of grazing, and then more importantly, various times of rest. The challenge is that when we talk about a lot of grazing concepts, and other concepts too for that matter, we talk about them in general terms and often don't really fully understand what we mean. So what do we mean by adaptive management? Well, adaptive management generally has a number of different elements, including planning, implementation, monitoring, evaluation, and then adaptation to the responses of the system to the decisions that we make. But this hasn't really been quantified very well. So the research which we've done is to try and quantify what we mean by adaptive management, and then also linking that to systems thinking, understanding that when we make certain management decisions, the system is going to respond in various ways, but we don't often know what those responses are going to be, or there are lag times in terms of responses. And so we have to adapt or change our decision over time. But we cannot really do that without proper monitoring and evaluation. What we found in our research is often that evaluation is the factor that people have most difficulty with. So if we can help people to evaluate the responses that they're seeing from their monitoring more effectively, then adaptive management may be able to become more effective in grazing systems.
My interest is in rangeland ecology. I'm interested in developing the theory in grazing systems, how we should optimally graze cattle for optimal grass composition and productivity, as well as for animal performance. Because often these people, they focus on grasses and forget about the animals. So I think you need to consider both. And so I work on the theory behind that, the concepts, we develop those. Then we work with progressive farmers to implement those, and especially in Botswana. And we then monitor the effect of that. So we develop the theory, then we work with the practitioners, and we have some very good progressive farmers that we work with, and they have been implementing it. We monitor the effects of that, and we can make adjustments over time if we think changes are needed. And so we've been seeing some very good results of the work that we've been doing, and very good reclamation of grasslands, farms that started off in a degraded state now are recovering nicely. And so it's working well. And I also spend a lot of time now taking these sort of ideas to other farmers. I speak a lot of farmers' days and things like that, and try to educate farmers on this. And more and more, that's a critical part of my whole objective is teaching, making sure the farmers get the knowledge. Yeah. One of the problems we find with often popular approaches to grazing management is they move the animals all the time into low quality pastures because they allow the pasture to rest, and then as it rests and matures, the quality goes down, the digestibility goes down, nutrient content goes down. And so you put your animals into that low quality pasture, you let them graze there for a short time, and then just as they may have got it down where they can start getting the new regrowth that would be high quality, they then move the animals. So that the whole idea is they don't want the animals to graze the regrowth because they think it's bad for the grasses. But actually what we're finding is that it's actually good for the grasses as long as they eat the bad grasses and the good grasses at the same time. So it must be what we call non-selective grazing, and that has to be achieved through focusing the animals on particular areas. You don't allow them to just graze. You focus them on what we call priority paddocks. Those are the ones you want them to graze short. You might have to use fire at the beginning of the season, and then you keep those paddocks short the whole season. You can't let it grow out, and that A, enables the animals to eat the bad grasses and the good grasses, and B, it gives them much higher forage quality because they're always getting that high quality regrowth. Now, if you don't get enough rain and your priority pastures don't produce that regrowth, then you can move them to your reserve grazing areas. So they don't have to get the high quality there, they're just getting enough food to eat, enough adequate quality food, and you're waiting for your high quality pasture now to grow, so you're waiting for the rain. So it's a flexible system. You're taking into account rainfall variability, and you allow the animals, you move them out of those high quality pastures to the reserve grazing areas if there's no rain, but always waiting for the rain and bring them back to those high quality areas as soon as the rain comes. So that works very well, and importantly, it's flexible. Yeah. So with that, we give it a rest. If you put a season of grazing in on those paddocks, what we do is the grazed paddocks, even the reserve paddocks that didn't get grazed as heavily, they go into the next year a full season of rest. And that by a full season we mean the entire rainy season from say November, before the rains start, you're already resting, and right through to the end of the rains and even into the early dry season. We only move the livestock in the mid-dry season into the new paddocks. So the rested are rested from mid-dry season to mid-dry season. So it includes those critical growing periods and the late, the early dry season period of root growth. So you don't move you don't stop that rest period too early. It must go well into the dry season. So you ensure that the grasses have got their roots fully done. Yeah.
At today's GSSA, I presented a review paper that we've worked on looking at the FORB studies that have been conducted over the past 60 years. We defined a FORB as a non-graminoid flowering herbaceous plant. It was interesting to see that the oldest definition of a FORB we could find dates back to 100 years ago, where FORBs were distinguished from other herbaceous grass and sedges. But despite that, there is still not much work that has been done on the FORBs. There's very little that we know. And FORBs are important because they maintain diversity. And maintaining diversity ensures functional redundancy. By functional redundancy, we mean if there are more species in a system, then they are more likely to overlap in terms of their functioning. And FORBs also play a key role in terms of the underground processes, particularly the FORBs with the underground storage organs, which we also refer to as geophytes, because recent studies have shown that they can store carbon and they also store other nutrients as well. But then their variation as well also contributes towards ecosystem resilience and stability.
I'm Michelle Tedder. I'm from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Today I presented on work from our drought research trial at our university research farm, and our key findings from that have been that our mesic grasslands appear to be fairly resilient to drought. We're in year 6 of the trial and we haven't seen significant effects on grass species composition and forb species composition, but we are seeing effects from the warming treatments that we have been applying on those sites, and we are seeing significant losses in species richness. However, we haven't seen diversity affected as yet, so we expect that these losses are as a result of your more rare species rather than your dominants that are covering the site. So the implications of this work are that your rare species, which are generally your forb species, which contribute significantly to our grassland diversity, are the species that we are likely to lose as a result of warming and potentially in the future drought on these mesic grassland sites.
My research interest is on methane emission from the animals. So in this conference, I've presented one paper on methane emission. The other one is on silage improvement, but still trying to see using forage, mixing it with tree fodder in the aim of reducing methane or reducing methane emission in animal. The message is that the manipulation of rumen using plant secondary metabolite from tree fodder, it can work effectively in reducing methane, firstly by either manipulating bacteria, archaebacteria that are involved in methane emission, or either by regulating hydrogen production during fermentation for volatile fatty acid, which contribute into methane emission. In other words, it can work as a hydrogen sink for animals, which then will reduce methane emission.
Today I just spoke about stitching with the golden thread, which essentially the message came down to, we know that pastures lose production year on year, anywhere between 10 to 30%, and we know that pasture is the number one driver in profitability. And because of that, we can't really afford any loss in production. And a way to try and combat that and subsidize that loss in production, we can look at a pasture stitch, which is an oversow just to try and boost that production back up to 100% perennial ryegrass to push milk production. And an aspect to look at is if your perennial ryegrass or your content of your pasture drops to, let's say, 75%, you end up losing about 46,000 Rand potentially in milk production that you don't get from that pasture. So if we can stitch to push it back up to 100%, we can get that milk production up to almost 180,000 Rand per hectare potentially.
I was here today to talk a little bit about drivers of forage quality and milk production from pasture mixtures. The basic message was just that if you have a Kikuyu ryegrass system, there's certain characteristics that are inherent to it. The one being that if the Kikuyu content increases over summer and autumn, you are going to see a drop in the carbohydrate or energy reserves in the pastures, which will in turn result in much lower milk production. That's something we really can't change, so like I said, it's inherent to the system. The good news is that we can improve those aspects of the pasture systems in the region by including plantain in the pastures. And if we can maintain that plantain content at 60% or above, we can improve the metabolizable energy content of the pastures and in turn achieve improved milk yield of up to 2 liters from late spring through to autumn from our planted pastures.
So my name is Ntutu Omkize. I'm employed by the University of KwaZulu-Natal as a senior lecturer, and here in the Grassland Society of Southern Africa, I've been serving first as the president of the society since July last year. And now from today onwards, I'm going to be assuming a position now of being a past immediate president. And a new president now has been elected, and that is Dr. Michelle Tedder. So over the past 12 months, we have been very involved in making sure that we bring together all the grassland scientists throughout the country and beyond. So we have been preparing for this conference. We have been attending international conferences. A lot of our members attended what is referred to as IRC, International Rangelands Conference. So we are doing all those things so that we can make sure that we put these grassland scientists together. And when we come here to a conference, it is so that we can exchange ideas. We can also get to see our old friends that we have not met in a long time because we are scattered throughout the country and beyond. So what we are doing now here, we are almost wrapping up this conference. It started 3 days ago, and we are now wrapping it up, and we are going to have a gala dinner this evening. So, yeah, that is what we have been doing over the past 12 months, yes, since July last year. This conference, I think it has been a huge success. I was not foreseeing this, actually, given that this year we were also competing with that IRC I talked about earlier on. So I thought maybe the attendance was going to drop. But to my surprise, we have around 169 delegates that have attended this conference, coming from all over the country, different institutions, and especially we also have people coming from outside the country. Like I remember some people, delegates speaking from the UK, speaking from Kenya. Some people are coming from Benin in Africa. So, and again, we have people coming from different institutions locally. So this has been a huge success as a conference, and a lot of very serious issues were discussed, including a session that was a special session that was on water yesterday, and a number of other interesting issues were discussed with regard to rangeland science and also planted pastures.
Michelle, here at the 60th Congress of the Grassland Society, you've been chosen, elected as the 60th president of the society. What is the initial aim of the society, and how do you plan in your tenure to fulfill that aim?
So the aim of the society was to bring farmers and land users and researchers together so that we can optimize the findings of our research and make it applicable to the land users, who are the main reason for the work that we do. So in my tenure as president, I want to revive these main aims of our society. Through COVID, we lost a lot of that connectivity. And so we want to try and work more with our provincial agricultural departments and try and revive that interaction with our land users, with our farmers, and work with them again, find out what their needs are, bring our research to them and make it applicable in the work that they do.
Grassland scientists, they cover a huge range of actually disciplines or sub-disciplines. And working together, that's an important thing, bringing disciplines together.
So another thing that I would like to do during my time as president is to encourage more interaction between the different scientific societies. Grassland science is a very broad discipline. We have a lot of other disciplines that work with us in terms of interdisciplinary research. And in science now, these interdisciplinary research teams are incredibly important. And so I would like to foster more collaboration between our societies, encourage more interaction, and share our knowledge and our results more with one another. We've already seen some of that at the conference this year, and I would like to encourage more of that at Congress 61 in Cape Town next year, to see a greater presence of our interdisciplinary researchers and knowledge sharing across our different scientific societies.